There's a question in the background. Is it time to divorce the mathematics of relativity from the theory and deploy the math in pursuit of its successor? There's a unique relationship between light, our environment, and us, between the free-moving microparticles, the macro space that charges them with data potentials, and the sentient being who unfolds and then comprehends from them. As data potentials pertaining to the macro environment are delivered by light, and we process, segment, organise and present and even embellish them, our minds reflect the complexities involved. It is entirely natural, therefore, that aspects of this complexity are intuitively transcribed in the work of key visual artists, but not by our current instrumentation. Perception is prior to conception. There is an ontological issue here with far-reaching implications. Vision is prior to science. The phenomenon occurs to us and not our instrumentation. The reality of visual experience will be prior to our conceptualizations derived from it. There's little point in looking at a photograph and then presuming that this is what is projected onto the retina to be then somehow understood by the visual system. This essentially describes a disconnect between the sciences and the arts, which some individuals in both camps are intent on closing down. By so doing, we'll be closing in on the nature of reality. In order to initiate aspects of this closure, I think we first have to bottom out a baseline theory task with respect to the nature of the data potentials involved and their propagation through the visual system, as their very existence challenges the notion that the phenomenon of vision is directly related to the fundamentals of optical projection. The phenomenon appears to manifest from two distinct takes on the real. One explicit and concerned with objective form, what is in the world, and the other implicit, where the primary function is related to implicit spatial awareness and where we are in the world. The two takes on the real containing different orders of information, and these being available to us on a monocular basis, suggesting that light from the environment has embedded within it two data potentials, a duality, that we as biological systems have been required to evolve in order to accommodate. For the sake of this presentation, we assume that the fundamentals of perceptual structure have largely evolved in response to the onset of light, and it's our biologically generated perceptual structure that provisions the near effortless undertaking of multi-sense integration. The primary and as yet covert organisation underpinning perceptual structure being a field that we as biological systems generate. While we have yet to understand this covert processing system, we have started to become aware of the requirement for it, or to be more precise, of the deficit. Something is missing, and something other than what we can currently address is presenting. In addition, intuitive study would appear to indicate that the dynamics of mind running perceptual structure are linked to multidimensional phase space. For that reason alone, we should be thinking in terms of applying associated mathematics from chaos theory and dynamical systems, from environmental source input data to the manifestation of the phenomenon, i.e., without chaos, criticality, and the ensuing dynamical systems, our awareness of the environment, our relationship with the real, reality, would be very different. Not just impoverished, it wouldn't function. So, in undertaking this challenge, we should unfold some understandings that have a bearing on the key questions of the day. If observation affects the outcome of experiments, we need to understand what's involved in an act of observation. What are the determining factors to our relationship with the real? To what degree is reality entangled with the real? Implicit in this approach is the realization that it's not enough to deploy our instrumentation, watch for indicators, and then ask ourselves, what could they mean? We have to ask right up front, what is the relationship between the instrumentation and ourselves, and then between the instrumentation and the real, and keep asking. Do the relationships involving the instrumentation mirror our relationship with the real, or do they violate it? If so, then how? What are the likely implications, and how do we then account for them? Science doesn't deal in the subjective relationship that we form with the real, but it can and does detect some of the related processes, along with the requirement for others that remain covert or dark. From the activities it can engage with, theories are developed about how data capture takes place at the retina, is streamed, transcribed, and then represented as vision. But what about the missing stuff? As we've seen, science is also aware of the so-called wave-particle duality entanglement issue, and that our observations of experiments conducted on the micro realm can affect the results. These understandings are not thought related to one another. I think we need to start again. In some respects, the function of mind presents a methodology for accommodating these complexities. The suggestion is that our perceptual structure deals with the related issues and should be considered as a form of working solution or meaningful accommodation of the factors involved. By understanding the system driving mind, we should understand something fundamental about the universe, because we are an expression of it. To understand the solution and hence the system, we have to study what that system presents in terms of the phenomenon provisioning experiential awareness. We have to make the subject of our study subjective experience. We should be studying vision as vision and be taking the activity very seriously. An act of observation embeds us into the universe. We are of the universe. Our current instrumentation doesn't admit of that understanding, so isn't. We can't take ourselves out of an act of observation and shouldn't try. I'd even go as far as to say such activity is foolish. We should not let our instrumentation stand in for us until we understand its shortcomings, the differential between its records and our phenomenological, perceptual experience, especially at remote scales where an experiential appraisal is not available as a cross-reference. This differential is not going to be understood in terms of accuracy. It's going to be a matter of meaning. This differential must also exist between what we conceptually think about the universe, that subsequently spawned the instrumentation we use to substantiate that understanding, and the function of our perceptual system and hence subjective experiential awareness. To distill that down to the fundamentals, the differential between the thought experiments and the concepts that characterize general relativity and its third-party ontology, and the first-person experiential ontology that proffers up perceptual awareness. These conditions are not relative. The explicit and implicit takes on the real are not relative. For those adopting the third-party ontology, what constitutes the real and reality are interchangeable, and so available to be probed, whereas on an experiential phenomenological basis we form a relationship with the real, with that relationship being reality. In certain circumstances, such as experimentation at remote scales, a probe may therefore have limited probity. If the relationship model proposed is as advertised, then it needs to be substantiated and realized in some way. It must surely be able to deliver practical, tangible advantages that can be tested and deployed. So where are the indicators of these tangibles? What evidence is there for this advantage manifesting? The national galleries around the world carry paintings depicting arrangements of everyday objects, and people come from all over the world to look at them. I very much doubt that an orderly queue would form to see photographs of those same everyday objects. The paintings are rightly worth millions. The photographs you couldn't give away. We need to understand the differential because the paintings are meaningful and the photographs aren't. Our conceptual model of the universe and our understanding of the micro realm are built off pictures, not images. This is not a trivial point. Our conceptual constructs lack meaning. What could be more significant? With the articulation of vision space, we now have a functional model of visual awareness, a new form of illusionary space, according with the fundamentals of perceptual structure. We need to make a concerted effort to research, develop, expand, and deploy it. So now for the step change from painting to the universe to relativity and quantum mechanics. I think that it is time to divorce the mathematics of relativity from the theory and deploy the math in pursuit of its successor. I think it's unavoidable. If we adopt the experiential ontology and our conceptual understandings don't measure up to the experiential reality, then our conceptual models are forfeit. They're going to fall over. It's that simple. There is nothing that is inherently dark. It's just that we have yet to conceive of what's required to make the approach, and currently the barrier to doing so is the prevailing ontology and the instrumentation developed from it. In this case scenario, wave-particle duality is just the situation where the illusion of third-party objectivity, together with its ontology, break down and fall over. The paradox will remain until we set it aside and work out what's actually involved in an act of observation. We need to deploy a more meaningful approach. For a solution to form, we need to go back to the basics and study the phenomenon, because vision space suggests that the dark stuff is making an impression there. It's hiding in plain sight. For us as biological systems to manifest the field structure linked to implicit spatial awareness and perceptual structure, it must be required, not just by us to perform actions in the world with some dexterity, but also required of us by the universe, to handle the raw data coming from the environment and carried to us by light. The system extends before us, through us, and beyond us. We are not distinct from it. The requirement for the generated field structure at the heart of our perceptions of the world must be provoked by the onset of light to neural tissue. Our eyes and neuronal processes have evolved to interface with those conditions. Our eyes did not evolve to satisfy a concept we hold about the universe in order that we could look upon it. In contrast, our instrumentation was designed for that function. That approach contains an implicit ceiling that we are now pressing hard upon. The full range of what constitutes the real, micro and macro, impacts on the retina. We as biological systems have to deal with that. Our current approach to the nature of vision, however, deals with only the part of the system developing a response based on light intensity. We can observe that the data relating to this is efficiently cleaned, a process where associated noise is removed. But then this noise is retained and continues to influence neural processing. The suggestion is that this is the start of the covert processing system, dark light. There has to be more to visual awareness than some sort of picture decoding and subsequent transference process to effect representation of the world. And to be brutally honest, that's screamingly obvious through even the most cursory investigations of the phenomenon on an experiential basis, not to mention through the evaluation of our collective responses to the work of visual artists. Likewise, we must stop to think about the nature of the two results seen in the double slit experiment, where we currently consider the single slit impression on the screen in terms of being a picture, where to the contrary we consider the impression left by the double slit to be just an abstract interference pattern. The patterning is also an impression of the slits. It's just that we can't compile this scenario to form something equivalent to a picture record, so we don't conceptually consider this potential. Conception is dictating the terms of engagement. There is information in the patterning. The phase and particle impressions and our interventions are an indication of the physical duality, a duality that calls into question the validity of maintaining the third-party approach to probing the nature of the real, along with the concepts dependent upon it. It does not call into question the nature of matter. It informs on the subject. It calls into question our ability to directly probe all of it. It calls into question space-time. It's the ontology driving the approach that needs to change. To observe is not the same thing as to make a device to record and then look at the record. If light has a dual relationship with us, then we should anticipate that our visual system has worked this out and is operating to accommodate the prevailing conditions. We perhaps don't receive coherent input similar to that underpinning holography, but visual data about the environment reliant on the duality might be encoded within the light array. Spatial data embedded within noise, with coherence influencing its structure, with the result being non-pictorial in nature. Coherence in a phase-based system of computation would then be involved in the realization of the spatial values. While we may develop aspects of visual awareness from depth and occlusion cues, we also generate proximity cues and a form of implicit spatial awareness. This process presents and has nothing to do with representation. No line or edge pertaining to the external world exists until we have unfolded or diagnosed the circumstance from noise. Notional line is then conceptually formed from this. In some circumstances, we will respond implicitly to a situation prior to any conceptualization processes even initiating. In order to access the nature of reality, our relationship with the real, we're going to have to take on board that as biological systems we form part of and are integral to the manifestation of implicit spatial awareness, not just as receivers, but as embedded players. If we don't confront the role we play in the formation of reality, we'll be left apparently with no alternative but to accept that our observations of micro-events affects the outcome of experimentation and the physical nature of the real, that mind to some extent determines the real. Picasso learned how to render mind, where to the cave painter it came naturally. We must learn the terms by which we can address situations and not assume direct objectivity. Our visual system appears to be passively taking up noise from environmental light and generating an all possibilities field through which to interface with or filter the incoming ray to extract spatial values. This is a relationship model, and not one reliant on detection. We attend to the field structure as a spider attends to its web. We address all of it holistically. Motion isn't tracked here, motion is understood globally in terms of flow. The field is set by establishing a locus that collapses the all possibilities potential to a set of conditional values to achieve implicit spatial awareness. And it's into this implicit spatial awareness that our explicit understandings about what we are looking at are projected. This just constituting 10% of visual field but running at a disproportionately high bitrate. The two are brought together. We need to understand and adopt similar techniques when dealing with remote scales. We are required to develop two independent takes on the real and operate two forms of attention. If we assume there to be just one, explicit, and that observation is direct and a matter of detection to be sequestered by instrumentation, then when conducting experiments at the micro level, we will be confronted with the consequences. We will be forced to deduce that we are affecting the outcome of the experiment, where we are in fact just varying our orientation towards the real through the instrumentation without acknowledging the variation. Our attention may therefore appear to be a physical factor in the record-making process, where in fact it's the instrumentation that's predetermining the terms of our relationship to the system under investigation, and hence limiting the meaning that it is possible for us to extract from the results obtained. To derive a full understanding of the situation, we require both takes on the real because both are required for us to make the call, the judgment that constitutes the formation of our reality. Reality will not reduce to a measurement. The scientific ontology can't accept the physical duality we present to the part of the universe under investigation, as much as it can't accept the duality those same aspects of the universe present to us. The prevailing ontology works to keep us out of the scenario, so it's not an irony that such an approach leads us to deduce that our attention affects the outcome of experimentation. It's inevitable. The prevailing ontology masks the nature of both reality and the real. The degree to which we can accommodate the issues in perception may establish the degree to which it is possible to resolve them. When we investigate at the micro level, our experimental setups can inadvertently push operations entirely into the micro realm, and so beyond a direct relationship with the macro condition and our physical state as observers. We don't acknowledge that transgression, so we can't fully comprehend the situation from the results obtained. There's no equivalent to a sonic boom here. The physically real is not playing hide and seek with us. We are failing to understand what's required to make an observation because we have failed to understand the duality at the heart of visual awareness, and hence work through the implications. Whilst we have evolved over billions of years to a position where sensory perception embeds us in the universe, our instrumentation hasn't. And because we haven't understood or fully accounted for our biological functionality, our instrumentation isn't embedded in the same way. Just because we make instrumentation doesn't mean that it acquires our status, our innate ability to observe and make the call. The same holds true at the cosmic scale. Using one data potential from the light array as the medium of information transference isn't necessarily a step towards greater clarity if it's reality we're intent on chasing down. There's a reason why relativity can't be squared with quantum mechanics. It's because it can't be. The theory of relativity needs to be replaced. The accuracy by which instrumentation accords with the concept of relativity is not proof of the concept's veracity. Think about it. It could equally be an indication of a well-functioning mirror. The shortfall in information we are able to unfold from a mirror's reflected world could be related to that failing to register in our instrumentation. It's ironic that we've become aware of the shortfall by virtue of the very accuracy of the conceptually derived instrumentation designed to account for the physically real. It clearly indicates that more than is required to justify a meaningful model. In the painting, the implicit spatial field informs us that the surface of the mirror is flat. On its terms, the mirror is just another object in the room. But our explicit sensory system buys fully into the reflected space. But then something's missing. Our implicit and explicit takes on the world have been split apart by the mirror. They have been unfolded by the visual pathways to present entirely different takes on the real. If we want to see the mirror, stand back a bit and use contextual or peripheral vision. It's this field structure and its computational process that's still essentially covert or dark. Move back in towards the mirror and we can choose to immerse ourselves in the reflection and reflect upon a potentially recursive situation that will lead us precisely nowhere. Within the reflection, the field structure has been reduced to a 2D plane, so suppressing or negating the formation of proximity cues. This more than element needs to make an appearance. On that we can all agree. The requirement for more than, in terms of cosmology, was uncovered by default, not by active pursuit or engagement with the fundamentals of perceptually generated reality. If we want to discover it at the cosmic scale, we're going to have to change our approach. If we continue to rely on partial data to model either the universe or fundamental matter, we're not doing physics, we're playing at it, however epic the scale of the equipment. We're not going to shine a light on these dark regions by fine-tuning our instrumentation or making it bigger. The shortfall is not a matter of accuracy or power, it's a matter of substance, pertaining to meaning. We are currently not thinking about the issues involved in a way that will elucidate. This is not a time to act, it's a time to step back, experience, think again, and then readdress the situation. We shouldn't continue to allow ourselves to be directed and led by processes limited by an inappropriate ontology. Without our relationship with the real conducted on an experiential basis, nothing would be knowable, so we might as well get to grips with it. This missing data should allow us to realign our approach to both the cosmos and fundamental matter, not to mention our operations and communications at a terrestrial scale. Dark matter and dark energy are likely to be integral to our multidimensional universe, but also to the formation of consciousness. If we as biological systems are dealing with these as yet unknown factors, it follows that the place to start getting to grips with them lies within each of us. The suggestion is that what's classified micro may need to be expanded to perhaps include what we currently term dark matter. The implication being that some microparticles, such as photons, bridge the two systems or dimensions in operation within the universe. I made the following remark with respect to the format of Picasso's painting in an earlier part to the painter, reality and the real presentation. If you consider that to be a bit slow on behalf of the artist, then to my mind, general relativity follows the same pathway. The requirement for inertial frames is an extension of the same predicament. There aren't any. Space-time is curved because it retains the notional frame of reference in an attempt to preserve the case for direct third-party observation. There isn't a time or a space that can be measured and which anchors the probe or in which to situate the frame. Space-time is a conceptualization made about the universe. And yes, it's going to be confirmed by the accuracy of the instrumentation developed to confirm it, as the technology shares the same conceptual outlook. Accuracy alone doesn't make the results meaningful. It provides a perspective, a take on the real, but constitutes incomplete data, and that carries with it consequences. What appears in the frame of reference lacks full experiential meaning. Will we as experientially salient beings see with the naked eye misplacement of distant stars due to light passing through a strong gravitational field on its way to us? For sure, but consider what vision space implies. Looking into the night sky is an atypical experience. Our visual system developed to look at objects in terrestrial settings. There's a meaningful contextual environment set out about us here as we conduct our business. Implicit spatial awareness is revealed through that abundant context. Remove this implicit function and we are reliant on just the explicit take on reality that plays out in central vision. Yes, you can expand this out, but the results will not be a model of visual awareness. If I'm on the right lines here, this explicit processing occurs mainly in the ventral stream, helping to define what we are looking at. This being only part of what's required to make the judgment, to make the call. The dorsal stream helps us define where things are in space, and indeed where we are in relation to what we are concentrating on. We need to study the phenomenon of vision to understand what information is not presenting to us as we look into the night sky, using central vision or our instrumentation, because that's what's missing, after all. The thought experiments for relative motion are conducted in space with astronauts in situations where contextual spatial awareness can't form and never will. The results or logical outcomes obtained are predetermined by the hypothetical setup. Similarly, at a terrestrial level, horizontal movement of a train moving in parallel to a stationary one will not disturb the spatial values associated with the formation of proximity cues. The moving picture sequence, together with the instruction to attend to the ball changing hands, so missing the gorilla's exploits, doesn't, to my mind, illustrate inattentional change blindness. In fact, it's the opposite. Either our implicit subconscious where system is fully operational, but there's no encroachment taking place, so there's nothing to attend to, or, as pictorial media doesn't reference implicit spatial awareness, the stimuli won't trouble the implicit system at all. The blindness is in the approach to the nature of vision, and it's manifested in the structure of the media. If on an experiential basis an object encroaches upon us, moving through contextual vision and posing a threat, while we are fixated on an unrelated task, we will be implicitly aware of the situation. The form of holistic awareness, operation in contextual vision, will not just alert us to the encroachment on our person, it will take over control of the situation and affect the necessary motor system to take avoiding action, all without us looking up from our task. It would appear that we can't use light as a measuring stick on a terrestrial basis, and this needs to be understood as we look into remote scales and develop theory. Light sits outside the terms of the theory of general relativity that relies upon it. Nothing can be relative to light. If there is a duality at the heart of our universe, and hence our perceptual structure, the two takes on the real from which we deduce reality will be non-compliant with the theory. For any of this to be meaningful, the mathematics of relativity would need to comply with aspects of dynamical systems. And having just typed that combination into a search engine, I can see that a good deal of work has already been undertaken in this area, about which I know precisely nothing. The sacrifice to be made will be one of ontology, with something akin to quantum decoherence taking place at the retina, and us serving as the environment. If so, then we, the sentient biological system, are key to sorting the issues arising from our over-reliance on instrumentation and theory derived from the application of an inappropriate ontology.